Good morning, everyone. We're going to give it a minute or two, and then we'll jump into our presentation today. Just give folks a chance to join. So I'm curious how many folks are in the midst of pulling together their BSA award submissions right now.
Soon.
Yeah, well, I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, this is particularly timely. We're doing a lot of head scratching and piece putting together right now. And so I'm glad to have this forum. So let me go ahead and kick things off. First, again, good morning. Thank you for joining us at 8:17 a.m. We hope this program is going to be useful for your design award submission process. And we hope that the recording that we were making of today's presentation will be useful for you and your teams to refer back to. The deadline for the first awards is coming up. I think it's starting in just about 3 weeks. Patricia knows best. That countdown is probably something you're really well aware of. So again, the program's being recorded. We will share it on the BSA website in the next couple of days. So you can check back there in future for the recording of the session. I, in the past, have found it very helpful to watch these again and again as I've been, going through my award submission to make sure that I'm on the right track, and you may too. So first, some housekeeping. I'd like to ask everybody to mute during today's presentations. You can do what you want with your video. We love seeing your faces, or you can, shut it down and eat your bagels, and that's fine too. But with regards to questions, feel free to throw them into the chat or just hold on to them until the end. We're going to hold our questions until the end. And then we will share questions with all of today's panelists at the end of the session, so that we can keep moving through and not run out of time. So let me jump right into introductions of our presenters today. Lara Fott is a senior associate. She's an architect and a sustainability strategist at Feingold Alexander Associates. And she's also co-chair of BSA's COAT committee. COAT, of course, standing for Committee on the Environment. It's a knowledge community that works at national and regional levels. And their mission is to achieve climate action and climate justice through design. So as Feingold Alexander sustainability strategist, Lara brings her passion for sustainability and her expertise in environmentally conscious solutions to all of the firm's projects. So she has a particularly unique lens on the award submissions that we're going to be talking about today. During this morning's session, Lara will be providing an overview of the framework for design excellence, which is a COAT developed framework, and which is now part of the BSA design award criteria. Also, we have Dena Martin. Dena is the Director of Marketing and Communications at Prelwitz-Chilinsky Associates. And Dena has more than 20 years experience in the industry, which she harnesses to bring her experience and her network to help her PCA team communicate the firm's message, values, and workplace culture. Dena is deeply committed to PCA's multi-front JEDI and charitable foundation actions. And she helps strengthen their effectiveness through thoughtful conversational communications. So PCA received the 2021 BSA Honor Award in Hospitality Design for their work with the Revolution Hotel. And during this morning's session, Dena will share this work as a case study of how projects can find alignment with the framework for design excellence requirements. We're also joined by Courtney Wilson, who's the marketing manager at Lear's Wines Apple Associates. Courtney is both a graphic designer and a marketing specialist. She brings both of these pieces to her role as marketing manager, and her visual storytelling prowess has certainly contributed to Lears's national recognition, which includes impressively winning more than 70 awards in the last 4 years. I had to triple check that when I read it. I was like, this is not fair, but it's a wonderful accomplishment. These awards include numerous BSA awards. Among these awards, in 2021, LWA was awarded for the Center of Engineering, Innovation, and Sciences, the Donahue Family Academic Arts Center, Adohi Hall, and Harvard University's District Energy Facility, some of those projects winning more than one award. So this morning, Courtney will be sharing some best practices for crafting award-winning submissions. And finally, the organizer of us all, Patricia Olshan, is the professional program manager at the BSA, and she manages the Design Awards program. She works with the Honors and Awards Committee, and she manages and produces many of the BSA's programs, including last year's Client Conversations series. Before she joined the BSA 2 years ago, Patricia was the program manager for the Design Management Institute, which is a global member organization advocating for design and design leadership in organizations that range from Pepsi and 3M and Philips, and beyond. Though Patricia is not an architect or a designer, she is interested in the business impact of design. So those are our presenters for today.
Great. Thank you, Kate and Marcia, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I will go over some of the changes and reminders outlined in the agenda earlier. But first I want to just give an overview of where we are with the Design Awards this year and beyond. So this spring, the BSA convened a group of advisors to talk about the future of Design Awards. And Kate and Dena were part of that group. And the conversations focused around really, why are we hosting the awards and who benefits? Is it the firms, the clients, the communities? How can we evolve the program to impact more people? We talked about awards categories. Are there too many? The BSA has a lot of categories every year. Or are they the right categories? Should we focus on impact areas? And we talked about simplifying the application process. We've heard feedback over the years that it can be very cumbersome and lengthy. We are trying to simplify the process, but still, it's an awards submission. So we want to make sure we're asking the right questions. In the end, Design Awards do recognize the great work that everyone does. You, your team, and your clients, and we want to recognize them. We also want to recognize the design solutions that are happening, and that those can make impact and align with everyone's values. So awards can be about designing for climate change to create better buildings and engaging communities in the process. So we are going to try to emphasize climate change and equity going forward. So some of the changes are new this year. Some are incremental changes. You may not notice some of the changes, but I'll just outline some of these. The AIA framework for design excellence. The BSA, like many other AIA chapters, are implementing the framework for their Design Awards program. We are taking a little bit of a step back from last year when we introduced the framework, not including the super spreadsheet that many chapters implement, but that's not to say we may not include that going forward. But we do want to emphasize that sustainability is an important factor with all the awards. We want to make members feel comfortable about the framework and metrics and working with your clients on gathering metrics. So last year we required 3 principles in your submission. This year we are requiring that you address at least 1 principle within your narrative. The project summary narrative is that big picture, and this is where you may use the metrics to support your story. We are including a statement of design excellence, which was formerly called At a Glance. This is really the marketing statement. This is going to be how you talk about your project to the public, to people that are not familiar with architecture. The client impact statement connects your values and your client's values with your work. We want to understand who is involved with your project. The award levels are slightly changing this year. We are going to offer an honor, a merit, which replaces last year's 2nd place award, and a citation award. Award levels are up to the jurors' discretions. Some juries opt to award many awards, and some may decide not to award any levels. So I'll go over that more. For a category, which is a major change for this year, we are eliminating the Sustainability Award, Design Award category. This is a little bit controversial, and Laura and I talked about this, but the BSA feels that sustainability should be implemented into all your work. So that will be a major focus for the awards and work going forward. Something new, experimental this year. Everything's an experiment. We may be adding a coach juror to all the juries, and this may be an impartial, non-BSA juror to help steer conversations around sustainability. Sometimes juries get stuck on deliberations, so this may help steer conversations. And finally, we have some tools and resources that I'll be sharing. I just want to give a little bit of a shout out to some upcoming programs. Starting with tomorrow, the residential design community is hosting a boot camp from 12 to 1:30, and they're going to be going over kind of a before and after case study for residential design. It's going to be also repeated on August 23rd. I see, pardon me, I see that Daniel joined our call, and he will be hosting that tomorrow. And after today, if you still have any other questions, you can join in on our office hours on August 30th. Registration is not needed or required. You can just pop into a Zoom meeting and ask any final questions, or maybe even you might share some best practices. So I will go over the deadlines that Kate mentioned. Starting with September 9th is coming up. We have campus and urban planning, healthcare facilities design, interior architecture and spatial design, On September 16th, K through 12 educational facilities design, residential design, unbuilt architecture and design. And on September 23rd, the honor awards for design excellence. After September, juries will meet going from October, maybe into November, and we'll start notifying winners in November and rolling out communications in December. Hopefully culminating with a celebration in January with our Design Awards Gala. And our hope for 2023 is to continue rolling out stories around the projects. And just a short shout out that 2023 is also the Halston Parker Centennial, and I'll go over that in a few. So I just want to go over a few things for submitting. Many of these things may be self-explanatory, and many of you have submitted in the past, but the first step is usually creating an account on Open Water, which is our design platform. You just create your username and password may or may not be the same as your BSA password. So I just want to let people know that. Once you create a password and an account, you can start the process. You can see that past awards that you may have submitted, awards that you have started and are incomplete. On the left-hand side is your menu, and you'll find everything right there. I just want to stress this page, which is the payment phase. This is very important. I want to stress the biggest recommendations I can give is do not wait until 11:59 for the deadline, for many reasons, but especially because this is the final stage of your checkout process. And sometimes processors can be a little bit slow, and payment may not be received until 12:01 or 12:04, and that may disqualify you, or it gets a little messy. So these are the requirements. I'm not going to go through all of these. Everything is on the website in Open Water and also in the sample submission forms. There is the entrant information, your firm name, submitter's name, project information, which includes eligibility. I may be referencing most of the time today around the built projects, whereas the unbuilt category is slightly different. But I want to point out the eligibility is with 5 years. So projects that are eligible are from January 1. Oh, I'm sorry about that. It's a typo. January 1, 2016 through December 31st, 2021. Eligibility, projects by New England professionals, BSA members, may be located anywhere, whereas architects from other locations, their projects must be located within New England. The criteria I just want to point out the juries are looking for a robust approach to sustainability and equity, and that's part of the eligibility. The framework, your portfolio, your narrative, statements, and images. I'll go over some of these, and team credits, and the final stage of affirmations, submission, and payment. So for the framework, this is required for all categories except for the unbuilt design, but unbuilt submissions are encouraged to achieve at least one principle within the project and narrative. If you do not have the information or metrics, write in NA, not applicable, wherever noted. And you should really try to add as much accurate data as possible. And word counts are noted. So please take a look at all of those. The framework, Laura will go over this, but there are 10 principles and questions will be in this order. This is a little bit of a sample of what you may be looking at when you get to the framework phase. We're not implementing the Common App or Super Spreadsheet this year, but it may return next year. And I would love to see this happen because I think it benefits everyone for consistency to apply for other awards or to gain some metrics to work with your client and teams. So it's pretty straightforward of the questions we will be asking. For the project information, pretty much the specs are the same for built and unbuilt, except for built, the portfolio is no more than 20 pages, and unbuilt is no more than 220 boards. This is we're adding one more board compared to last year. So back to the requirements. I just want to go over a project summary. There's a 250 word maximum. It's the same as that you're using for your digital portfolio. And this is the big picture. Focus on the process effects, the requirements, lessons learned, describe specific ways in which you achieved and integrated goals. And again, the juries will evaluate based on your approach to sustainability and equity. These are questions you may think about when you are writing your summary. How does the project provide more with less? Were there specific social equity issues addressed? So think about these in terms of the big picture story. For design, statement for design excellence. This was formerly called At a Glance, and it provides a marketing overview. We will be using that, the BSA will be using that for our marketing, and we want to educate the public about architecture and the benefits of what of the potential benefits. One of our advisors kind of stated that, think of this as how you explain what you do to your mom. So this gives a good overview. The client impact statement is talking about your values and your goals and your client's goals. This is where you talk about the engagement and access of users. So I'm just going to go over some more items. For images, everyone usually has questions about these, and I just really want to stress, also in your narrative and in images, do not include your firm name unless requested. That's usually in the first part when you're starting the application phase. This will really disqualify your projects, which would be a shame. All these specs are included in the sample application and also the call for submission package that we have on our website. Team credits page. Once you get to this page, this may look a bit more laborious than previous years, but we do want to recognize all the teams involved. So we want to know who the landscape architect was, who worked on acoustics. So please take a moment and thoughtfully add these names into the fields. So finally, I'm going to just go over the categories. The BSA has quite a few categories, which may or may not change for the future. And we usually alternate some categories with the exception of some standing categories. So for this year, campus planning and urban design, healthcare facilities design, interior architecture, K through 12, residential design. And our annual categories include unbuilt architecture and honor awards. For next year, this may or may not change, I have to be honest. Categories may change, such as this year, we're offering residential, next year, housing. So stay tuned for news on that. I'll just go over quickly around some eligibility for all these categories. For campus planning and urban design, you may self-select a subcategory on campus planning, projects that focus on an arrangement of buildings, or urban design, which is sponsored by an institution that shape the physical environment. Interior architecture. The jury is looking for application of reuse, functionality, safety, and the overall experience of the architecture and understanding of the places and the stories within the project. K through 12 is either new construction or rehabilitation, private or public, pre-K, elementary, or secondary. Residential design gets a little bit more complicated. Not very complicated. I just want to say that because this is in partnership with AIA New York CRAN, the eligibility is a little bit different. For the location, it can be based in either New England or within New York regions outlined in the submission, call for submission form. That includes Hudson Valley, Long Island, New York boroughs. So please pay attention for the location and also for the fees, whether this applies to you. For residential, this is for single family, 1 to 4 unit dwellings, whereas housing is 4 or more. Danielle and residential design can go over a lot more of this even tomorrow. Unbuilt architecture, which is a very unique category. But the framework is not required, but we encourage you to approach at least one principle around the framework. And eligibility projects cannot be under construction or potentially under construction. For this year, we are providing you with 2 20-inch boards. For honor awards for design excellence, I'm happy to share that AIA Austin has accepted the jury invitation this year. So there will be a jury of 5 professionals reviewing all the submissions, and this is really exciting. And this award is a culmination of design excellence of all projects. It could be residential, commercial, and Courtney and Lear's Winesapple won the honor awards last year for their work for the Harvard Energy Facility. And you can take a look at that project. And that deadline is September 23. I will just give another shout out to Harleston Parker. The nominations has expired, but we will be opening up nominations starting in January, and we encourage you to submit your project. The criteria is very unique, where it is solely based on beauty, based on the decisions from the jury, which includes architects and Boston leaders, everyone from engineers to landscape designers, people in the media, artists. So it's how they perceive beauty within Boston. And we're excited about the centennial year next year. Finally, as I have a sip of water, the BSA is working hard to add more resources to the awards to help educate you around the framework and the awards process, and to give you guidelines that can help you with your submission. So we've added an FAQ page on our website, resources. We've simplified the call for entries forms this year, where it's just one package that hopefully gives all the details in one package that you can download and review. The framework for design excellence is noted in multiple places, and we'll go, we encourage you to look through that. We're developing more programs and boot camps, such as tomorrow's program with the residential design community. And finally, the Design Awards Submission Library, which is new this year. During the submission process, you will be prompted to accept inclusion into this library should your project win an award. last year was the first year that we started this, so this library will start growing. And you can look at all the winning submissions to see what people have been working on. And finally, another shout out for tomorrow's program and our office hours coming up. And that is it. And I'm going to hand it over for time-wise to Laura Thott.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you to Kate and Marcia for including COAT in this. And we hope to just give you all a quick overview of the framework and provide some resources for you. And also, please reach out to me or my co-chair on our website. Our addresses are listed on the BSA COAT's website for if you have any further questions. But as Patricia noted, the Framework for Excellence is set up with 10 points. You all are, if you've submitted last year, you're very familiar with them, having to choose 3 of them. And if you could go to the next slide, Patricia, thank you. So we at COAT are the stewards for this Framework for Excellence. And so part of that is setting up just a great way for architects and in the end for all of the marketing folks who have to actually explain all the amazing things that the teams did to gather that information and really harness what we are all doing in our projects. Not every project hits all 10 points, but most of them do, and almost every design firm would be hitting all those 10 points, whether or not they realize it. So it's just a matter of making sure that we are giving ourselves a frame, and hence the framework for all firms nationally to be able to speak about it, and also to pull the information together. I think we're all very information driven, and so that's how we've gotten to keeping it in those 10 points. So as we know, our industry is moving towards zero carbon and more equitable and resilient projects, for numbers of reasons. And so we're just trying to facilitate that language moving forward. So I'm going to, after I stop presenting, I'll put a whole bunch of links in the chat for everyone to resources. There's some great YouTubes about from other AIA chapters that will walk you through what the Framework for Excellence is, and just some other basic information that hopefully will give you the tools you need to do this, to make this easier and to not be daunted by the process. And next slide, please. So part of those resources is the AIA's website itself on the Framework for Excellence. It's an amazing, amazing tool. The AIA has put together a large amount of information here. On the left, you see the lead-in page for the Framework for Excellence, and you kind of see outline or boxed out in orange is one of the tabs, one of those 10 tabs. They've broken down into each of those 10 points for the framework. And then if you click on it, you get what you're seeing on the right. And it is a wealth of information that I would hope the designers are using. And if not, please, we would love to tell them more about it, or anyone, if there's any way we can help you out with that. But in that, the website is broken down into very distinct pieces. So if you only have a few things you could do with a project, here are those high impacts. If you click on if you were to click on the first of the gray boxes on the bottom, it also gives you a best practices. Again, just really great resources, and these would be really helpful for when you're submitting too. So going back and saying, did we do this on this project? And then the resources tab is amazing. Again, it has a ton of links in case you really say, well, what is equitable communities? And so you can take those resources and look into what others have done. And that brings you to the last tab, the projects tab. It's case studies. So you can see, if we go to the next slide, You can see projects that have won COAT Top 10 and see how and the ones that are specialized in say equitable communities. These are pictures from that website from 2 case studies. This is the Environmental Center and Preschool on the upper and the Ford Foundation for Social Justice on lower. And it talks, their submissions are in there, their language is in there for you to look at and see how other people used went about describing the things that we're all doing in our projects to hit these pieces. And I know that Dena is going to talk about this a little more as we go through, but just keeping to my time, if we go to the next slide. I think if you submitted last year, you may be familiar with the super spreadsheet. I know it's a daunting, overwhelming spreadsheet. Any spreadsheet that has 12 or 15 tabs is daunting, but it's an amazing resource. And these are the things that your architects are doing on their project already. And it really is just doing what we talked about, allowing us to pull that information together and put it in one resource, which would make, I'm guessing, all of your lives as the marketing folks easier if the architects are actually putting their information in. And also it just gives them, as the name says, a framework to follow, because there's a lot of information. This is the intro page, which it actually pulls information from all the previous other tabs into this page. But if you clicked on any one of the other super tabs, it gives you resources there, again, links and items. So if you weren't quite sure how to calculate your water or your water reduction, it helps you with that. So again, daunting, but really great resources. And then the last slide is the Common App, which Patricia also mentioned. This is another app for the Framework for Excellence that some of the AIA chapters are using to kind of pull that super spreadsheet together. It's a little more simplified, but it's pulling that same information. We are not at the BSA using it, nor are we, asking for the super spreadsheet information any longer, but it may be coming back. It is one of the steps that the AIA really wants us to be moving towards. So I wanted to let people see it and be familiar with it. And again, knowing our time's short, I will put these resources in the chat, and please feel free to reach out to me with any questions.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to have Dena Martin from PCA, who's going to share a case study of how projects and framework requirements for awards can align.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Laura, Patricia, and Kate. I just wanted to share with everyone this morning my process for approaching the new BSA awards program. So first and foremost, just wanted to state that the Revolution Hotel was selected as the top honor on the Hospitality Design Awards for 2021. But before we decided to put that project forth, reviewing the program, I think it's key to know that myself and the marketing group at PCA, which includes 2 principals and a marketing coordinator, we really went through and tried to understand the AIA's framework for design excellence. We discussed it, we went over the points, we thought about it, and we were excited about having the opportunity to talk about some PCA projects that perhaps we could put forth. So I think that's key, to have broader conversations with people in your firm, architects, designers, leaders, and project team members to discuss the framework so you can categorize your projects in a broader category. These are big picture questions that the BSA and the AIA wants us to focus on, align our client mission and values with, along with your firm's values and the projects. So first and foremost, understand the framework for design excellence. And then we asked ourselves some questions about some of our projects, and I'm imploring people to ask this of themselves of their work as well. How does your project improve quality of life within the context of its local and broader community now and for the future? Any sustainable design elements surrounding economic impacts? What projects meant something to us in a different way, where we felt that we really reflected the fabric of the community, where we really engaged in the community, where we met their needs? Do we have any projects like this? So we thought about these big picture questions, and we came up with a couple of projects, but we decided to move forth with the revolution. We lovingly call it the Rev, because it hit a lot of those points. There was a lot of work that went into the design of this project and a lot of thought and intention. And we had a wonderful client who had a great vision. So this was the perfect project to align with that framework. So I'm going to sidebar for 1 second and talk to these 2 photos on the side. When we were reviewing the project, we were looking at materials, reviewing some of our projects, and these 2 photos stood out to me. And one of them is a cutout cafe wall outside of the Revolution Hotel. And it's actually a community outdoor cafe where people who work, live, or are just passing by in the community can bike up and walk up to that window and grab a cup of coffee, get a latte, get a pastry. On the other side of that wall is a cafe that's in the hotel lobby of the Rev that is used for hotel guests, but people are welcome in the neighborhood to come in. But I thought that was a really cool detail, and I was like, oh, this project's interesting. I want to note that the Rev was designed and built before I started at PCA, so this was a discovery for me as well, learning about the project. The photo on the bottom is the courtyard at the Rev, where Cosmica is a restaurant that is housed there, and it services hotel patrons, of course, and guests and visitors, but it's also open to the community. And the design team provided a cutout window to that exterior wall to invite the community in. So I thought that those were key elements that sort of started to evolve my development of the narrative. So if you want to go to the next one, Patricia. So we decided on the Rev. We were very excited about it. So the first aspect of evolving and writing the narrative, hitting all of the framework points, which is super important here, was I brainstormed with the project team about the design story. So I explored the project team's design process. So I met with the design principal and the lead interior designer on the process. I let them just give me essentially all of their thoughts on what transpired at the beginning of the design of the Rev. And they showed me all of the files where I could find things. They talked about the contributing team members. We had a great team for this project and a branding company, and we worked with local artists and artisans. There was a lot of local contributors to this project. So I just let them talk. I took notes, I listened. And then I asked some important questions to them. We talked about engaging with community groups. Did we engage with community groups on this project? The South End Landmarks Commission was a group that we worked with. So I looked at their materials in the file. Can we make further impact correlations aligning with the framework? So I posed these questions to them. I asked for supporting material and data based on the framework, and we poured over photography. We used 3 professional photographers and some other folks that we sent out to the job site during design, but also as it was getting built. And finally, just to take photos, to see their perspective, and that was helpful to build the story. So now I have all of the material. I've talked to people. I understand the project. I understand the community groups. I'm aligning the framework with the client's vision, our vision for the design, the extended team. And now I'm moving forward. But I just want to note that this process took a little bit of time. The new program is different and unlike others in the past. So I did set aside some time to get through all of this work and to talk to correct folks. So next, I created an outline aligning the project story with the framework. So I took the framework key points, and I'm not going to go over all of those. Lara just did that, and you can reference that. But I created an outline where I felt that the Rev spoke strongly to these points. So I didn't worry about the aspects of the framework that the Rev didn't meet. I focused on the ones where it did, and I really focused on that. So I started writing within the context of my narrative, and I was very specific in my writing, and I credited my sources. Like if I made a reference to the South End Landmarks Commission's work, I put that in there. I added my metrics and my measurements, and I left plenty of time to finalize the text. I was not doing this last minute or 3 or 4 days before the submission was due. So I think that's important to know that you do need to set aside some time to get through this. And these are just some photos from the digital portfolio, and I just put some shortened captions there so you can see the impact on the community that we felt and we do believe that this project has. So Patricia, do you want to go to the next slide, please? So this is just 2 pages of the narrative that I wrote based on the framework. And it took a little bit of time to massage this and edit this. So again, I put all of the notes and all of the material that I developed in talking to the project team and looked at that framework and understood it, and added these points and developed a story underneath the framework. So one of them is designed for equitable communities. Another one was designed for the economy. And then there was one that was focusing on the big picture. So I highlighted those in the bullets where it says designing for integration, the big idea. So I documented those big ideas. There is one lessons learned that I'd like to share. So as I was submitting this project to the portal, I didn't realize that there were word limits to some of the questions. So I had to do editing on the spot. So just be aware of the word limits to some of the questions when you're submitting your narrative and your statements, because you will have to edit or not. But that was a little snafu for me, but I was able to work through it successfully. So, and then there's one more slide that I want to share. This is just a few photos from our digital portfolio. Again, there's the statement that has all of the big picture ideas on the first page. And then our full bleed images with very descriptive captions that reference the AIA framework and correlate back to the narrative to reinforce these big picture ideas and what we felt that the Rev met according to the AIA framework. So that is what I'm sharing today. I hope it's helpful. And again, if anyone has any questions about the framework that Lara just described, there are resources. But again, I think that's important to start to review that first and then think about your projects and some of the work that you're putting forth.
Thank you, Dena, for sharing your process. It's a great approach, really great ideas. I'm going to copy you, and thank you. Next, Courtney Wilson from Lear's Wines Apple will share some best practices as well for crafting award-winning submissions.
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Courtney Wilson, Marketing Manager at Lear's Wines Apple Associates. So I'm going to walk through today some best practices and some tips of submitting awards. To just start, our firm is focused around some core values seen on this slide, and we use this as a framework for when we're putting together our submissions. So it always goes back to these points. So some best practices for crafting submissions. I'm going to walk through some awards that we received, a process for crafting submissions, and then the best practices, tips, and lessons learned. These are some of awards taking a large step back that our firm has received, over 100 national and international awards. And these are some of our BSA awards that we've won recently and in the past years as well. Specifically focusing in on 2 that we received last year for 2021. Adohi Hall had received 2 awards, so I'm going to dive into this a little bit more. But the Adohi Hall received the Housing Design Award, as you can see here, and it also received the Sustainable Design Award. So you can see on both of those slides, some of the images that I pulled forward were parts of the submissions that we sent in for the BSA that helped receive the awards. So process for crafting the submissions, I've outlined just some key steps that we really follow when it comes to crafting our award submissions. So first is just researching, gathering the guidelines, what's the timeline, what are the past winning projects, taking a look at those past portfolios. And then, like Dena said, asking your team, what is needed, what is the story here, what projects are eligible, what are the best fit that go with the guidelines, and then what do you think that people want to see? So early involvement with the team and principals is key. scheduling meetings to discuss these questions and really identifying which projects are best to put forward. The second step is to gather what you already have in your files and compare, decide what needs to be edited or recreated. There's some new text requirements that are part of this year's submissions. So making sure that you identify really early what's new, and then maybe what you already have in file that you can revise to tell the story. And the third step is the storytelling. It's laying out all the photographs that you have for your digital portfolio, and then getting together with the team and creating the story that you want to tell, all going back to the framework of design excellence and how it tells that story. So process for crafting these submissions in the storytelling, we like to lay all of the images out. We like to take a look at what we have collectively as a whole in our full documentation database, and laying them out is a great way to look at things, taking a large step back and seeing what the story is that we want to tell this time. Another strategy too, if you have multiple voices, is to tag which are the favorite photos from the team, maybe people outside of the team, which ones really are drawing attention, which ones tell that story the best, the story, the narrative that we want to tell. So one way is putting different colored Post-it notes per person that's looking at them. And just laying them out, telling the story, and then some best practices, tips, and lessons learned is that every submission is different. So every story should be different. If you're submitting like a Dohi, we submitted into 2 different categories. That one, making sure that the story that you're telling for each one has that different story to it, layouts wise, text wise. And there is a certain magic to rearranging and reimagining. So if you did submit a project in a previous year, it's great to take a look at it again and what can we rearrange? How can we reimagine this way of storytelling? And then the biggest tip I have is when working virtually and remote on these award submissions, we have found that concept board is a great digital tool to use when working on your award submissions. So you can see on this slide, we have boards set up for each of our projects. So we set them all aside for each project, and we can go into them per award submission. So zooming in a little bit, this is our board for the Dohi Hall, which won the 2 awards that I had mentioned earlier. So taking a large step back, this is what it looks like. This is our brain when crafting award submissions. And then zooming in a little bit, we create a little section on that board. You can see this one here is the BSA Sustainable Design Award. So what we do when we zoom in on this concept board is we identify what are the requirements. We put them all down on this board, and we also identify how many images, and this is a great way to figure out what order they go in. You can, just like how we laid on the table, you can do that here. You can lay them all out on this concept board, and then you can see, you can zoom in on the concept board. You can scroll around. You can have a database of what are the graphics, what is the photography that we have here, and then you can go to the specific board that you've created for the award, like I just showed in the last slide, and you can zoom in. You can go really, really far in and see and go page by page, and you can move things around. And you can also make notes to yourself to say the text needs to be updated. You can just write notes to yourself so that you can go back in on your design files and make sure these things are the latest and the greatest. So that's an example of how our working process. And then here's an example of like what a winning award portfolio looks like. So you can see here, this is our Dohi Hall, how it was completed. And this is for last year's award submission as well. So you can see we have captions on the images. We did full bleed. We incorporated graphics that are, this was the housing award. So we wanted to make sure we showed the interiors, we showed the mass timber construction that it was made from. And it just really, we wanted to make sure it all told the story that we wanted to share, that aligned with the narratives that we were given and the design excellence metrics as well. And thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Courtney. Now we'd like to open up the room, if you will, for any questions that any of you may have. And I know that we did have one question that was submitted. Let me pull that up. Elizabeth had submitted it. And she said, is the statement of design excellence supposed to specifically, solely focus on sustainability as the slide indicates?
Not specifically, thank you, Elizabeth. Not solely sustainability, but that is a focus area for sustainability through design. We suggest that maybe describe how the project uses design to benefit the occupants. That may include equitable communities, and the planet in general. But solely sustainability, whereas in energy or anything, but I would suggest focusing around the principles of design excellence. I hope that clarifies it.
Somebody else want to ask a question? I'm going to open it up to any of you all. So if not, I can go ahead. I'll read Robin your question about how many projects are submitted in each category. And then a follow-up to that is the jury different from each category?
Correct. It varies for different categories. Some categories we receive maybe 20 submissions, some 80 submissions or more. So it's really up to what people are working on, and certainly the time frame for eligibility. Again, you have 5 years for the project from January 1, 2016 through December 31st, 2021. The follow-up question about juries is, yes, the BSA is a bit unique, where we have separate jurors for all different categories. And jurors are comprised anywhere from 3 to 5 people. And I am finishing up some invitations for all the jurors this week. Some of the jurors are have full expertise within a category. Some are users within the category, such as we may have someone around behavioral psychology in healthcare facilities. We want to understand how users interact with the projects. And again, this year we're experimenting with having a non-BSA COAT member participate, hopefully with all the categories. Potentially next year, we may invite an EDI expert as well to sit in all these categories.
Amanda has a question. She says, while responding to at least one of the 10 principles is required, is it beneficial to answer as many as possible?
There's no scorecard. It's not a checklist that, the jury will evaluate projects individually and not in competition with each other. If you're thinking you're addressing all 10 principles, that you get additional points. No, that is not the purpose. We want people to focus on at least one principle. And, you know, as even Laura pointed out, many of the projects, you're addressing more than one principle. So you can certainly address that.
And if I can add, just please, I would recommend to folks to focusing on where your project is the strongest in alignment, where your story is strongest, because your narrative will be more compelling if you focus on those key areas. If you try to focus on all of the principles, I would think that they would tend to get weaker unless some folks have projects that meet all of the criteria or the framework, which perhaps is impossible, I'm not sure. But I would focus on where you're strongest, if I could suggest that.
I would add the caveat that because sustainability is integral to all awards now, that even if you're not doing the energy or, you know, an item, you know, choosing if you were doing equitable design, which may not have a sustainability bent exactly to it, you may want to still be addressing that. As it's still part, you know, that is a matrix that would be part of all design, all awards at this point.
Going to keep on with the questions then. When will the residential design category be available again? And can that house be built by a firm principal for themselves?
The residential, as I mentioned earlier, many of our categories rotate every other year. So last year was housing, this year is residential, next year may be housing. So residential may not be offered until 2024 again. Can the house be one built by a firm principal? Yes.
Could you clarify the eligibility dates again? What was said doesn't match what was listed in the call for submissions for built projects. And that comes
Sure,
from
yes. Again, everything's experimental this year, including consolidating one call for submissions form, which we may have uploaded a previous version earlier. Hopefully the dates are accurate in that form right now, but in the open water portal, when you enter the dates for your project, it will be accurate. So eligibility is, and these are for built projects, 5 years. So starting with January 1, 2016, running from December 31st, 2021. So if your project is being complete in January 10th of 2022, unfortunately, it is not eligible this year.
And then Lauren asked the question, do you need to fill out the 100-word narrative for your selected principles, or do you just include in the overall project narrative?
You may, but I think it's best to customize the narrative. And maybe Dena or Courtney, you can address how you approach this writing.
I'm sorry, clarification on the question. Are we repeating, putting responses in under different principles? Is that what?
Sorry. So my question was, when you're in like the portal to submit, there's like all those places to put for like 100-word narrative for each of like the 10 principles of the design excellence. But I was confused on how you guys were describing it. That is it this year, you don't have to call out in that form, and it's just the overall project narrative that you just talk about it.
I think what you're asking is that there's two different statements. There's a design overall statement about
Right.
the project, and then the principles are different categories of the framework that you need to address
Yeah.
separately and differently.
Yeah.
So you do not use the overall text where you describe the overall components of your project aligning with the framework and then just plug it into the other principles, even if there is a little bit of overlap. I would say that the design statement for your overall project is the summary, and then the narrative, the text that goes under
Okay, so you
principles
use
is
those ones.
expanded. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was just confused because I was interpreting that we don't use those anymore and you just talk about it in the overall project. So I appreciate that clarification.
It takes a little bit of time. I think I've noted that a couple times, like going through this process. It's different. And I think until we all get used to it and we all get used to start to thinking of our projects in different ways, you got to spend a little bit of time going over what's required. I know that I did.
Maybe useful to also note it's different and evolving. You know, last year was very different than the year before that. This year is a little bit different than last year. I imagine next year it could be different again. So there's no sort of resubmit button that we can hit on the BSA awards right now.
And then we just have time for one more comment. Elizabeth came back and asked, so to be clear, the eligibility for build projects listed through 2025 no longer applies?
Correct. I am looking into that form right after this meeting and correcting those states.
Okay, great. Well, you guys, it's 9:27. Just want to be mindful of everyone's time. And if you have any other additional questions, you can throw them in the chat. But we want to thank you, everyone, for attending today, as well as Laura, Dena, Courtney, and Patricia. Thank you so much. And then I just want to state some final reminders. A recording of this session will be posted to the BSA YouTube and Design Awards page in the next day or two. Please join us for the upcoming residential design programs tomorrow and/or August 23rd to learn more about the AIA framework and the residential design awards process. If you have any more questions about your awards or submissions, please join us anytime between 12 and 1 p.m. on August 30th for office hours so that we can answer questions, and we'll have a copy of these questions as well. And finally, the Marketing PR Network community will be regrouping in September, and please stay tuned to hear the news about what's next. So thank you all. Kate, if you want to add anything to, or Patricia, thank you.
No, thank you, everyone. And good luck with the awards this year, and reach out with any questions.
Yeah. See y'all at office hours.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.